When you grow up with narcissistic parents, you don't realize at first that your world is built on manipulation. You think it's normal to feel like love has to be earned. You think it's normal to walk on eggshells, trying to keep someone happy who never actually wants to be happy. You learn that peace in your house is a performance, and you become the actor in a play that never ends. They shape you, not with love, but with control. They make you believe your worth is tied to their approval. You learn to survive by reading their moods instead of building your own identity. That's the first wound, the death of authenticity. A narcissistic parent will make you question your reality. They will twist your emotions until you doubt your own memory, your own feelings, your own truth. They make themselves the sun, and you orbit them, losing your gravity. Every achievement you make becomes theirs. Every failure becomes your fault. And you grow up carrying guilt that isn't yours, shame that you didn't earn, and pain that wasn't meant for you. But they don't care, because their only goal is control. You spend your childhood learning how to please someone who will never be pleased. You study their tone, their expression, their silence. You learn how to avoid conflict, how to disappear when necessary, how to shrink yourself to survive. And even when you become an adult, those habits stay. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You seek validation from everyone. You think love is supposed to hurt. You think relationships are supposed to be about earning approval instead of mutual respect. That's how deep their poison goes. But there comes a moment, the breaking point, when you look in the mirror and realize you don't know who the hell you are anymore. You've been living someone else's script. You've been programmed to believe that your emotions are wrong, your thoughts are selfish, and your desires are dangerous. That's when the real war begins, not against them, but against the version of yourself they built. See, narcissistic parents don't just wound you, they wire you. They program your nervous system to associate chaos with love. They teach you that silence means danger, that approval means safety. So when you finally step out into the world, you find yourself drawn to people who feel like home. But home was toxic. You repeat the cycle unconsciously, chasing the same kind of validation you never got. You keep trying to fix what broke you by finding it again in others. That's the curse. And unless you face it head on, you live your whole life repeating their damage in new forms. But here's where the shift happens, the moment you wake up. The moment you say, enough. The moment you realize that everything they said about you was a lie designed to keep you small. You weren't too emotional. You weren't too difficult. You weren't ungrateful. You were just human. And your humanity threatened their control. That's why they tried to crush it. That's why they made you doubt your light. Because deep down, they knew that if you ever saw your worth clearly, you'd stop needing them. You'd walk away. And that's their biggest fear, losing the control they built their identity on. When you finally wake up from that nightmare, it's not peace you feel at first. It's rage. Decades of swallowed anger come to the surface. You start remembering the lies, the manipulation, the times they gaslighted you for speaking the truth. That rage is sacred. Don't suppress it. Channel it. It's the energy that breaks the chains. Because healing from narcissistic parents isn't soft. It's war. You're not just healing wounds. You're rewriting your identity from the ground up. You're unlearning fear, guilt, and shame. You're rebuilding trust with yourself. And that takes brutal honesty, ruthless accountability, and relentless discipline. You have to learn to become the parent you never had. You have to protect yourself from the voice that still lives in your head. The one that sounds like them, whispering that you're not enough. You have to kill that voice. Replace it with truth. Replace it with strength. Replace it with self-respect. You have to build new standards for love, for boundaries, for respect, because nobody's coming to fix it for you. Nobody's going to hand you closure. You have to create it yourself. You have to become the version of you that would have terrified your narcissistic parent, the one who no longer seeks approval, who no longer explains themselves, who no longer tolerates manipulation disguised as love. The consequence of growing up under narcissistic parents is that you either repeat their behavior or rise above it. There's no middle ground. You either stay broken or you rebuild. You either let their lies define you or you define yourself. And the world doesn't care about what happened to you. It only cares about what you do with it. You can't control your upbringing, but you can control your response. You can use the pain as a prison or as a forge. That's what makes the difference between victims and victors. You were trained to doubt your worth. Now you train to believe in it. You were trained to please others. Now you train to please your purpose. You were trained to obey. Now you train to command. Every day you choose to unlearn the old programming, you get stronger. Every day you stand up for yourself, you build a new foundation. Every time you say no to manipulation, you reclaim power. That's the process. Painful, slow, but unstoppable. And yes, there will be moments where the loneliness feels unbearable. Because breaking free means losing not just your parents, but the illusion of family you've been clinging to. You realize that they won't change, that they never will apologize, and that closure might never come. That realization hurts, but it's also liberation. You don't need their apology to heal. You don't need their love to be whole. You don't need their approval to rise. You only need you. The real revenge is not becoming them. The real revenge is living free, building peace, discipline, and strength they can't destroy. Because narcissists thrive on control, and the moment you stop reacting, they lose all their power. They become irrelevant, and that's what kills them inside. Not your anger, but your indifference. Healing isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about facing it, feeling it, and still choosing to move forward. You can't rewrite your childhood, but you can rewrite your destiny. You can use their betrayal as fuel. You can use their manipulation as wisdom. You can use their absence of love to learn how to love yourself. That's how you transform trauma into power. So if you grew up under narcissistic parents, understand this: you are not broken, you were conditioned. And what's conditioned can be unlearned. You were taught to serve their ego. Now it's time to serve your mission. You were taught to stay small. Now it's time to become undeniable. You were taught to be quiet. Now it's time to speak. You were taught to follow. Now it's time to lead. You are not the result of what they did to you. You are the result of what you choose to do next. And the choice is yours. Stay the same or rise and rebuild. Healing from narcissistic parents isn't just about moving on. It's about tearing down an entire belief system that was built to control you. When you start healing, you begin to realize that your thoughts aren't really yours. The way you doubt yourself, the way you seek approval, the way you overthink every decision, all of it is programming. It's their voice living rent-free in your head. Healing is about eviction. It's about reclaiming your mind, one thought at a time, one boundary at a time, one act of self-respect at a time. At first, it feels like you're going crazy. Because when you've spent your life being gaslighted, when you've been taught that your truth doesn't matter, believing yourself feels unnatural. You start questioning everything. Am I overreacting? Am I being selfish? Am I the problem? That confusion is the scar tissue of manipulation. But the moment you start trusting yourself again, even a little, you begin to see through the fog. You realize that healing isn't about fixing something broken. It is about rediscovering something buried. Your voice, your intuition, your worth. They tried to bury it under shame and fear, but it's still there, waiting to be found. Healing means you stop chasing their validation. You stop waiting for the apology that will never come. You stop expecting them to change. That's one of the hardest truths to swallow. They won't change. Narcissistic parents don't wake up one day and say, "I see what I did wrong." They built their whole identity around being right. Expecting them to take responsibility is like expecting fire not to burn. The real freedom comes when you accept that and stop trying to make sense of why they did it. They did it because they could, because it made them feel powerful, because control was their drug, and your pain was their supply. But you don't have to feed it anymore. Healing is starving that dynamic. It's refusing to react. It's refusing to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It's refusing to chase love from those who only know how to weaponize it. The moment you go no contact or even low contact, you'll feel withdrawal. It's strange, but true. You miss the chaos. You miss the pain because it's familiar. That's how deep the programming goes. You confuse discomfort with safety because that's what you grew up with. But the longer you stay away, the clearer it gets. The silence that once felt heavy starts to feel peaceful. The distance that once hurt starts to feel like oxygen. That's when you know you're healing. You begin to realize that your feelings were never the enemy. They made you think emotions were weakness because emotions gave you empathy, something they lacked. They made you believe that sensitivity was shameful, that crying was pathetic, that forgiveness was foolish. But those qualities are your strength. Your empathy means you can see what they can't. Your sensitivity means you can feel truth deeply. Your forgiveness, when it comes from power, not submission, means you're free. They can't manipulate what you've already made peace with. Healing also means setting boundaries and sticking to them even when it feels uncomfortable. Narcissistic parents trained you to feel guilty for saying no. They made you believe that boundaries are betrayal. But boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're walls to keep your peace in. Every time you say no to something that violates your peace, you're saying yes to your self-respect. And at first, it feels wrong. It feels selfish. But over time, it becomes strength. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You start living like your needs matter, because they do. Then comes the rebuilding of trust. Because when you've been lied to your whole life, when truth was twisted into guilt, trusting anyone feels impossible, including yourself. But healing doesn't mean trusting blindly again. It means learning discernment. It means listening to energy more than words. It means watching actions instead of promises. It means trusting your own perception more than their manipulation. The more you trust yourself, the less control anyone else has over you. And that's what true freedom feels like. Healing also means forgiving yourself. Because somewhere in your journey, you'll look back and see all the ways you tolerated things you shouldn't have. You'll see the times you tried to please them, the times you stayed quiet to avoid conflict, the times you believed their lies. You'll feel ashamed for not seeing it sooner. But you have to understand you did what you had to do to survive. You were a child trying to stay safe in an unsafe environment. Don't hate yourself for adapting. Honor that version of you for doing whatever it took to make it through. You're here now because of them. But now, survival isn't enough. Now it's time to live. Healing from narcissistic parents isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong. Some days you'll feel broken again. That's normal. Trauma healing is like detox. The poison leaves in waves. Some days you'll miss them, even though you know what they did. Some days you'll crave connection, even though you know it's dangerous. Don't judge yourself for that. The heart heals slower than the mind. You'll outgrow the pain in layers, and every layer you shed reveals more of who you really are. The truth is, the person you were meant to be never died. They just went into hiding. They hid behind people-pleasing. They hid behind overachieving. They hid behind fake smiles and suppressed emotions. But once you start healing, that version begins to emerge again, stronger, wiser, untouchable. You start remembering what joy feels like, not the kind tied to someone else's approval, but the kind that comes from being in alignment with yourself. You start making choices that honor your peace. You start saying no without explaining. You start loving yourself without guilt. That's when you know you're rehealing, when peace stops feeling foreign and starts feeling natural. And yes, the grief hits. Because you realize the childhood you deserved, you never got. You realize the love you craved, you'll never receive from them. You mourn the parent you hoped they'd become. But that grief is sacred. It's the final goodbye to the illusion. It's the death of the fantasy that kept you stuck. Grief is not weakness, it's rebirth. Every tear you shed is a piece of the old story leaving your body. Every moment you sit in that pain without running from it, you reclaim your strength. Healing also means creating a new standard for love. Because once you've seen manipulation up close, you'll never settle for fake affection again. You'll start valuing honesty over charm, consistency over intensity, and peace over drama. You'll stop mistaking chaos for passion. You'll stop mistaking silence for punishment. You'll stop mistaking love for control. And in that clarity, you'll attract people who are genuine because your energy will finally say, I know my worth. Eventually, the pain turns into wisdom. The wounds turn into strength. You stop needing to prove anything to anyone. You stop seeking revenge or validation. The silence that once felt like loneliness becomes power. You realize that you didn't lose a family, you lost your captors. You didn't lose love, you lost manipulation disguised as love. What you gained is priceless: peace, clarity, freedom, self-respect. Healing from narcissistic parents doesn't make you soft. It makes you sovereign. You become your own authority. You stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose. You stop trying to fix people and start building your own empire of peace. You start to understand that the greatest rebellion against a narcissistic upbringing is happiness. Real, grounded, unstoppable happiness. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's mood. The kind that comes from finally belonging to yourself. And that's what true healing is, belonging to yourself. No longer outsourcing your worth. No longer explaining your pain. No longer waiting for love to be permissioned by someone else. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, I survived you, I outgrew you, and now I choose me.